Welcome back to the Football League Paper podcast. My name is Matt Badcock. I'm joined by our chief writer, Chris Dunlavy, and a huge welcome back to editor John Lyons. John, you've been in Chile for the last few weeks. We've missed you. How are you, mate? How was your trip? Did you see any football? What's going on? What's going on in the?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it was the off season over there, so I didn't get a chance to see any games. I mean, football league wise, I managed to catch a few goals from the football league on the Chilean news because they do keep a sort of a player watch on any players that are playing in leagues around the world. So I did see one or two Ipswich goals over the holidays and one or two of the Derby games. They showed the goals from those games, so that was quite funny.
Didn't you play a bit? Didn't you play a bit while you were there as well, John?
Sorry?
Didn't you play football a bit while you were there as well?
Yeah, I had a little bit of a goalkeeping accident with my finger. So 6 weeks in a splint with my finger. So a couple of weeks to go. So I think goalkeeping days are sort of well and truly finished now.
Did they ever start though, John? I thought you were more of a sort of a kind of ball player.
Well, started as a goalie, then out on pitch, and then back in goal.
Oh, yeah. This is the point where you tell your famous Jay Demerit story, John.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, I definitely want you to.
How long have we got? Well, I mean, it was only really that I used to play Sunday League football, and Jay and another one of his lads, Kieran, used to come down, and they played there at that time. It was before his Watford days, so he was playing sort of non-league on a Saturday, and then he'd come down and play for us on a Sunday morning. And obviously at that stage, we knew he was obviously a good player, but we didn't know how good he was. And I think it was only maybe a year or so later, then he got the chance to, he obviously got spotted by Watford and got his contract and ended up playing for the USA and going off to the World Cup and playing against England in the World Cup. So phenomenal career from where he was to where he got to.
You're being humble there. Normally you tell us, John, that you helped make him, but you're sort of keeping it down low.
It was John the scouts came to watch.
Yeah. They go to watch you, John, and they saw Jay Demerit. So
yeah, well, he was sort of steep. I remember obviously in his professional career he was playing as a centre back, but I think for us he was sort of playing playing defence, but he could basically get the ball and basically steam through the opposition and score a few goals as well. So he was quite a tasty player to have for us on a Sunday morning.
Was that just the tactic? Give it to Jay Demerit and just let him sort it out.
Every professional is a striker when they play amateur football, aren't they?
Yeah. And they all score about 50 goals as well, which I think starts to show you the levels. Well, good to have you back, John. A bit of housekeeping before we get going is to make sure you like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We really appreciate that. We're going to talk quite a bit about the FA Cup today. There weren't loads of shocks on over the weekend, particularly on Saturday, John. I know when you were sort of hunting around for a front page, obviously we had Wrexham on Friday night, probably got the ball rolling, and you'd hope maybe more came from there. But let's start with that one on Friday night, and Wrexham coming through against Nottingham Forest in this sort of quite slightly bonkers game, Chris, wasn't it? Look like they won. Nottingham Forest kind of got back a couple of times, and then all the way to penalties. It was a bit of a bonkers game.
Well, yeah, it's kind of what you want in it from an FA Cup tie or from any football match for that matter. But it was sort of brilliant the way it happened. I feel like Wrexham are involved in a ton of these games as well. Where there's sort of they go ahead and people come back and it's sort of goals flying in left, right, and centre. That last equaliser from Callum Hudson-Odoi to make it 3-3. I don't know if you saw it, but what a goal! It's like when he took it on his chest and sort of cushioned it into the far corner. And when that goes in, you're thinking, there we go. That's the upset off, because how many times do we see it when the lower league team gets sort of steamrolled in extra time because they're not as fit and haven't got the depth. But no, they did really well. And obviously to win the way they did on penalties was brilliant. So I would imagine we'll be seeing them on TV yet again in the next round.
Well, yes, the TV cameras did get the most out of Ryan Reynolds being there, to say the least. I mean, I was, as I said before, I kind of covered Wrexham in the FA Cup down the years, and then the non-league, went down to Brighton a few years ago. I think they got I think it was a 1-1 draw. I remember Adrian Chislovic scored a really good goal, and their fans were, brilliant behind the goal, make a lot of noise. And those people who kind of saw all those games back then, and now obviously getting to enjoy it with quite a few other people who've suddenly discovered their Wrexham shirts. But John, a great night again for those fans who are enjoying this kind of mad ride that they've been on the last few years.
Yeah, because I think I'm right in saying is that the first Premier League team that they've beaten under Ryan Reynolds since he's been there, and the ownership with Rob McElhenney. So yeah, it's a great night for them. You can understand why everyone was obviously ecstatic afterwards, and fair play to the goalkeeper Arthur Nkonkwo for his saves in the shootout, and Phil Parkinson doesn't tend to get too carried away, but even he seemed to be buzzing on Friday night. So yeah, great night for them, and obviously maybe slightly disappointed with the draw against Ipswich in the next round, but I suppose they'll fancy their chances maybe in that one at home to win it and get to the fifth round, get a bit closer.
Yeah, I can imagine some of the words that Ipswich fans said when that draw came out, going across to North Wales. Not easy, especially as it has a feel of a Friday night written all over it. But we'll see how the games sort of fall out. But Chris, for Nkonkwo, he had that mistake against Swansea the other week, didn't he? That lost them the game, where he kind of came out to punch, tried to recover it, then dropped the ball, and someone that's back in the back of the net. So a nice bounce back for the keeper there.
Well, yeah, I think as our resident goalkeeper John will attest, that is the life of a goalkeeper. You're either, people don't notice you when you're doing the sort of the meat and drink stuff on a daily basis. Do they? It's kind of you're either the hero or the villain generally as a goalkeeper. So yeah, you saw with in quick succession there.
Yeah, that was quite as you say, it exposes what happens when it goes wrong. It does go very wrong, but there's the highs as well, and the glory. We're probably kind of, John, looking at Saturday's games, there weren't loads, were there, kind of shocks really? Any sort of games that sort of stuck out for you?
Not really, to be honest. We were scrambling around a bit on Saturday afternoon. I mean, I suppose maybe if you're looking at just purely on results, maybe one that was maybe stood out a little bit for us was Burton Albion going to Boreham Wood and winning 5-0, because I think a lot of people were sort of saying that or tipping Boreham Wood to win that one with the record that they've had in the FA Cup recently, and especially with them being at home as well. So for Burton to go there and thrash them 5-0 was a great result for Gary Bowyer and his boys. So well done to them, and that was a great result for them. And I think they'll be hoping that maybe encourage them a bit in their league form now as well. Maybe they can try and sort of push out of danger in League One. Yeah,
I think apology coming to Burton Albion on the non-league paper podcast later in the week, because I think we all thought Boreham Wood would push them. As we've had in the previous rounds, they've beaten Eastleigh and Brackley as well. So I think, I don't know whether they've taken it all personally or what sort of it fired them up before that game against Boreham Wood. But Boreham Wood flying in the National League, and one of the sort of hottest sides in recent years in terms of causing upsets in the FA Cup, and they've gone there and slapped them with their new signing from Gateshead, Kane Adom. So that's great result for them. And say we'll come on maybe to their draw. They've got West Ham at home. But Chris, what about Mansfield? That was a great win for them against Sheffield United. Yeah,
well, there's one that I don't think anybody really tipped, did they? I think everybody thought Sheffield United at home against a side from League One probably do the business. And yeah, I mean, when they went 4-1 down, you couldn't believe it. But it was like, I'd say those two. The first goal from Lewis Reed especially was incredible, and then the second one, it was a deflection, but it was almost identical. It was pretty much same situation, same position, smashed it in again. So they did really well, but you got to be pleased for Nigel Clough, haven't you? He's sort of been around so long, and he is a bit of a master at this competition. So he has overseen a few. He took Sheffield United to the semi-finals as a League One club in 2014. So he knew what he was doing. But yeah, brilliant for him. brilliant for them. And I think what was most impressive about it as well, after Sheffield United got it back to 4-3, you're thinking the nerves will set in, but they actually saw it out relatively comfortably. There wasn't a massive scare for them thereafter. It wasn't a sort of, backs to the wall panic stations job. That they saw it out pretty comfortably. So yeah, really good result and really good performance.
Yeah, what games have you boys reported on that, your big shocks, kind of the memorable ones that stick out? I'll come to you first, John. Any that, because that is kind of as reporters, when we go to these games as neutrals, you're kind of always wondering, there's quite a few times you go and there is no shock, and kind of the story isn't where you kind of hope it would be. But occasionally you get those days, don't you, where it kind of all aligns, and the reason you're sort of at that game becomes reality. Any that kind of stick out for you down your years in the press?
Yeah, and I mean, just one little aside to mention first of all, just to say on that Mansfield one. What about the performance of Rhys Oates? Because he looked as though he had the Sheffield United defence on toast there. I mean, I've never seen him play that well before. I wonder if he can do it again. Because if he does, his value is going to be definitely increasing. But just coming back to maybe a couple of cup shocks I was at, sort of actually, funny enough, more sort of non-league sort of related. But I was fortunate enough to be at when Staines Town knocked out Stockport in the FA Cup on penalties. That was a dramatic one. So that was one I sort of remember really well. And at round about the same sort of time frame, maybe sort of maybe 15, 18 years ago, 20 years ago almost now, when Havant and Waterlooville beat Swansea in the cup on the way to get in the Liverpool. I think Havant and Waterlooville beat Swansea 3-2 that night. That was a phenomenal game, and obviously everyone knew that the prize was a trip to Liverpool in the next round. So that was pretty special as well. So there's been I've had some good experiences down the years with those kind of cup ties.
Yeah, Chris, what about you?
I think there's been quite a lot, but the two that spring to mind was one that you reminded me of, Batters, which was my team, Newcastle, getting dumped out by Stevenage at Broadhall Way. I would like to remember when it was. I think it was around about 2009 or 10. I think. Yeah.
2011, I think it was. No, maybe 2010. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
The thing I remember best about, funnily enough, was it was. I don't know if you remember with there being all the fallout between Kevin Keegan and Mike Ashley, when Ashley had sort of, when after Keegan's sort of second coming had gone sour, and Keegan he was sort of banished from Newcastle and not allowed in the ground, and he turned up at Broadhall Way because he was a commentator for one of the broadcasters, and you had to walk all around the pitch and past the Newcastle fans. I remember getting an absolute rapturous reception as he went round, and you thought, that'll spur us on, but obviously it didn't. And all the best to Kevin. Obviously, we saw the news last week with him getting diagnosed with cancer, so all the best to Kev. But yeah, those were the dark days for Newcastle. It was like, when we're struggling, and we were the exact team you want to play in a game like that, where you're coming to a sort of unfashionable ground, and it's tight and it's packed and all that sort of stuff, and deservedly beaten. But the most vivid one for me was when Middlesbrough beat Manchester City in 2015, when I think it was the season before Guardiola got there, so Pellegrini's final season or thereabouts. And Borough beat them 2-0 at the Etihad. Patrick Bamford scored. He was on loan at the time from Chelsea, as he was really young. But the thing I remember best was Lee Tomlin, who you might remember from various clubs, from Peterborough. He was at Borough, he was at Bristol City at various times, played in the Premier League with Bournemouth briefly. He just tore them to shreds. He had one of those games, and I think anybody who's watched Tom over the years and knows him, everybody said he had Premier League ability. He was, in terms of pure technical quality, he was one of the best players you'll see, what he could do with a football. Other side of it, maybe wasn't there. He wasn't the fittest. maybe not the most sensible guy in the world, but he's incredibly talented. And on that day, it just all came together. And he made Man City's players look like mugs a lot of the time, including, he nearly scored a wonder goal where he sort of spun Vincent Kompany and went round the keeper and just couldn't quite sort of finish it off. And I remember afterwards, after the game, he sent a tweet out saying that I can't remember exactly what the wording was, but it was that he'd found, I think he just put his shorts in the washing machine and he found Vincent Kompany in there because he'd fallen out of the back pocket.
You don't get that anymore. It's sort of like this sort of social media sort of drum the fun out of people these days, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. But in fairness, the company replied. I don't remember what he said. His little round of applause, and I think until next time or something like that. So fair play to Kompany as well. He did see the funny side of it, but that's the one I remember.
I always remember the quote talking about Premier League ability. I remember when Tomlin was playing for Russian and Diamonds in the conference under Justin Edinburgh, and he said Premier League touch about him, that he could kind of go on, and obviously that Justin Edinburgh was proven correct there, that he would go on and have the play at that sort of level. So talking of Manchester City and being on the end of upsets, do you think they've kind of gone the other way? And this is one thing we did predict correctly, and which I'm sure you watched, John, on all your flights home. You watched last week's FLP podcast on YouTube. We said Manchester City don't seem to believe in FA Cup fairy tales anymore. They go out and whack teams. Not sure that we expected them to put 10 past Exeter.
Yes.
Yes.
We did say, didn't we? We did say Exeter were going to have a very potentially tough afternoon up there, and they absolutely did. And yeah, I think Man City, it's just, they're a bit of an object lesson, aren't they? To anyone who doesn't, in terms of how you approach a game against sort of lower league opposition, they don't relent. And I think Gary Caldwell said it afterwards, didn't he? He said that, that was the sort of the gold standard. He said, the relentlessness and the fact they weren't happy to settle for 6 or 7 or 8. It's a great example. And yeah, that's what you want to see. You do see a lot of teams, don't you? Whether it's mentally, physically, whether it's a conscious decision, they get to 5-6 and down tools, and they didn't, which was unfortunate for Exeter. But yeah, that's against a team of that quality, that can always happen.
Yeah, I think the thing was with Man City as well is they had quite a few of their young lads playing, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
And some of them, I think you got the impression some of them thought that it's fancy. There's might be a good opportunity to get on the score sheet here and make a bit of an impact. But I mean, fair play to Exeter. I think it was 9-0, wasn't it, when they got the goal back, and that was probably that was a great strike, probably the goal of the game, to be honest. So at least that's one memory that all the fans will probably cherish, and obviously from the club's point of view, they did make a fair chunk of money out of it as well. So hopefully that will help them, because obviously the club have had a tough time this season. Obviously they had that fire there before, which sort of damaged some of their facilities and stuff as well. So it's money's been sort of fairly tight there as well, and what have you. So hopefully that will help them on their way.
So, yeah. 10 shots on target, Man City. So that's how efficient they were. Admittedly, 2 of the goals were scored by Exeter, but still.
Well, yeah, they were. I think that's the problem, isn't it? Well, probably sometimes. Imagine when you're on a pitch, and obviously, you said before, to play for Exeter at that level, you have to be an unbelievably good footballer. But I imagine there were periods in that game they're just standing and watching. This is just. Hopefully, they sort of enjoyed that at Summit in a very strange way. Sort of enjoyed sort of going up against that sort of like level of player. But
perhaps a bit unlucky as well, because it was Semenyo's first game as well for Man City, wasn't it? And he sort of looked different class. And I think we obviously had a little bit in the paper at the weekend, didn't we, about the fact that there's a big windfall for Bristol City there of 10 or 11 million from the profit from the sale of Semenyo when they sold him to Bournemouth. So it's great to see the rise that he's made, and as I think one or two of the pundits were saying afterwards, he looked as though he'd been playing for Man City for years.
Yeah, he's a great story, isn't he, Chris Semenyo? I mean, we're just touching him briefly, but he's had non-league loan spells at Bath, and to kind of get to where he is now and be having the impact that he's having is a great sort of inspiration to a lot of other players who kind of, you know, want to get to those heights.
Yeah, he's like the classic one of those players, isn't he? Like, we've all seen him over the years, and you know, you watch people at this level, and you never quite know, do you? You know, you think, you know, he's a good player. You probably think maybe he's a Premier League player, but until they're actually tested at that level, you never quite know. And yeah, Semenyo is one of those players who's just gone, and a bit like sort of, I don't know, I guess like Berries has done the same thing, where, you know, very good Championship players, and you think, all right, can they do it? And then they go up there, and some do, some don't, and they absolutely have. But yeah, it is a great example, because he did start out, you know, as you say, those non-league loans. He did it the hard way. He had to prove himself in the Championship with Bristol City, and yeah, to get where he's got to and play for Man City, incredible. Really, it just show you that not everybody has to come through an elite academy. Not everybody has to you know, sort of be Phil Foden. You can make it to the top if you start off in the Championship and work your way up.
Yeah, and interesting what Pep Guardiola was saying after the game as well about players who, you know, come through academies and don't kind of play in that. You know, he was talking about sort of playing against players who, you know, parents and that. But
I'm like, right, I agree with Pep on this, right? I think all of us will probably agree on this, that you academy football is a bit sanitized, and you don't get exposed to the real side of the game, which toughens you up. But at the same time, you've got a system in EPPP, the Elite Player Performance Plan, where big clubs can just go and essentially pluck the best players from lower league clubs, offer them a load of money and stockpile them, instead of just leaving them there to play exactly the sort of games that Guardiola's saying they need. So like, a bit of it is just like, yeah, I agree with them, but also, well, stop signing loads of youngsters and let them stay at Crewe or Mansfield.
Do you see that lads who would be playing first team football are playing under 23s and all that sort of stuff, under 21 football. So.
And they'd be much better off coming through a youth system, lower down the system, where they play at 18, 19 and get the exposure.
Yeah, good point. We'll come on to the draw, but let's quickly to touch on first is Wigan beating Preston. Ryan Lowe, he enjoyed that one, Chris, didn't he, from his past, from his Preston past.
He will have, because he was slightly drummed out there when he. It was a strange one with Ryan at Preston, because they just weren't having him. They just weren't having him, and for quite a long time, I think there was a. It wasn't. He had that season, didn't he, where they got so many 0-0 draws. I think that was part of the problem. They just kept drawing 0-0 and kept drawing 0-0, and there was this sort of, you got this reputation for being dour and unadventurous, and it kind of set against him. And yeah, but it got to a point where it was kind of untenable. And fair play to Ryan, he sort of stepped down before he got pushed, but he admitted himself, that I think he did enjoy beating them, I think.
John, they're obviously we've got Arsenal now in round 4, so you know what's ahead there. But a great draw for them.
Yeah, great draw for them, and you just wonder how adventurous we're going to be in that one, because that's going to be tough. We had preview of the Portsmouth Arsenal game in the paper on Sunday, and obviously we were hoping, obviously against hope as it turned out, that Portsmouth representing the EFL might sort of turn them over, and obviously it was great that they got that. Pompey, at least, they got that early goal, but obviously Arsenal sort of turned it on in the end, and probably could have had obviously more than those 4 goals. Though from a Portsmouth point of view, you're obviously extremely frustrated to let those goals in from set pieces in the first half, to sort of pretty much gift wrap Arsenal the lead. So yeah, it's obviously going to be a monumental task for Arsenal. Sorry, for Wigan in that game. So yeah. Because obviously with these Premier League squads now, these mega clubs, they've got so many good players. Even if they do rest half a dozen, they can just bring in another half a dozen world class players. So it's going to be a hell of a job for them up against Arsenal at the Emirates. But I'm sure they'll go out and give it their best shot and have a go. And I'm sure Ryan will probably have a game plan up his sleeve to try and keep it as tight as he can.
Yeah, talking about weird goals, Chris. Let's just touch on that Barnsley one on Monday night. Adam Phillips's goal, kind of talking about John saying Giffer up there. Soboslai, not quite sure what he was, not quite sure what he's doing. But Conor Hurahan's comments after the game were interesting. That he felt slightly disrespected by
yeah, I think he's got a point, to be honest. We've all played football, haven't we, right? And as a sort of,
not
I think
very good goal.
Well, no, exactly. But I think it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's down the park or five-a-side or whatever.
I know what you're going to say. I'm going to agree with you that you have these moments.
You have these moments, don't you? Right, where you just want to, you beat someone and you think, I've got the beating of this fella, and you just want to either you want to humiliate them, or you just want to show off, and you just want to sort of go, rub it in a bit. And I think that's what happened. I honestly do. I think he skinned him.
It was such a good trap back, wasn't it? It was such a good trap back that
he skinned him for pace. He's gone, I've got the beating of this fella, and then he's thought, I'll just try one more the way you do, and
also what he's saying is what he did there is also kind of what's happened probably to you as well, that it kind of doesn't.
Yeah,
there's a reason. But I know what you mean. He trapped him back, didn't he? He probably got 50,000 Liverpool fans applauding him for it. It's so good, and you kind of think, and obviously he's been playing really well. He's scored a good goal as well, and he's probably thinking, oh my God, I am actually really, really good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I am just going to knock this ball back across the face of goal for absolutely no reason, and then it's all gone wrong. Fair play to Adam Phillips for gobbling it up and sticking it in, because you wouldn't have expected.
I do think Hurahan's point stands though, which is that would he have done that against Arsenal in a big game? And I'm like, nah, would he? Nah, there's no way. He was taking the mick out of someone, really, wasn't he? Because he thought he was better than them. So I think that point does stand.
Got a bit of a
fair play to Barnsley. They did go there, and they did give give Liverpool a real run for their money. There, it's a little bit of a shame. Obviously, their couple of late goals in makes it look a little bit of a beating in the end. But at 2-1, they were still very much in the game, and I think their fans can be sort of proud of the way that their players went about it. And, I mean, they've got to get their league form sorted out now, Barnsley, and start pushing up the table. So hopefully it might just give them a bit of a boost the way that they did perform for the bulk of that game.
Yeah, Chris, and people kind of raving against someone we've spoken about earlier in this season, Reyes Cleary, how well he played. I've seen Barnsley fans on Twitter sort of talking about how he's totally rubbish. It was a one-off. It was a total fluke. Everyone look away. Please, nothing to see here. Please all move on. But
that's it. It was good.
Those things don't help when you go and play well against a Premier League side if you're trying to keep.
It's good timing for him, but sort of bad timing for Barnsley, wasn't it, in January? But I mean, let's be honest though. Sort of the days are gone on though when sort of managers would sign a player off one good performance or something they saw on the telly, aren't they? If someone's going to sign him in January, they're going to sign him in January, and the wheels will have been in motion for some time. And I think he is going to end up in the Championship sooner or later, I would expect, because he's performed consistently for quite a while now. And scoring from the halfway line doesn't hurt. Playing well against Liverpool doesn't hurt. So yeah, the moments catch the eye, but yeah, I think all the underlying data as well will suggest that he's a Championship player.
Scoring from the halfway line, something you haven't done in a game of football. I'm safely assuming.
No, I definitely could not reach the other goal from the halfway line.
Let's talk about some of the interesting ties in the fourth round draw. Liam Rosenior going back to Hull with Chelsea. That's sometimes you see these draws and they're kind of they're meant to be. Do you think John that was written in the stars, that one possibly?
Yeah, it looks like it. I mean, Chelsea were pretty took Charlton apart at the weekend. So now they're up to, obviously they'll be going up to Hull now to another sort of Championship team. So they'll be hot favourites for that one. So it's going to be a tough Hull, but I mean, I think Hull probably have surprised quite a few people this season with how they have performed in the in the Champions. I think people thought with the financial problems they had, the transfer embargoes and different stuff, and obviously they couldn't pay fees and what have you, that they would perhaps sort of struggle this season. But they've done some shrewd recruitment, and at home with the crowd behind them, they'll fancy having a good crack at it.
Yeah, we've got Grimsby's reward for beating Weston-super-Mare, which they were made to work quite hard for, having to got pegged back a couple of times by the National League South side and getting a late winner. Really, they're at home to Wolves, and Chris, if you're a Wolves fan, you're sort of having flashbacks to that Manchester United League Cup game early in the season, aren't you? Having to go up to the Lundell Park and the seaside.
Well, yeah, I mean, if that's got to be on TV, hasn't it? That one, you would think, and it's got upset written all over it. The way, well, I mean, to be fair, Wolves have picked up a bit, haven't they? Recently, they've got a few results, and obviously they had a decent win at the weekend. But you'd still say, I mean, going away to Grimsby, if the results do take another downturn in the Premier League, and there's nothing to suggest they won't, then that is a potential upset, especially given, as you say, what Grimsby did to Man United. And I remember watching that game, and that wasn't a fluke. That was, that was a manager who watched Man United and set up a game plan to stop them doing what they wanted to do, to exploit their weaknesses. And I mean, God, if any team's got weaknesses, it's Wolves. So if there's nothing to suggest they couldn't do it again. Obviously, Wolves will be favourites, but it has got upset written all over it, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think obviously we had the big upset of the weekend was Macclesfield beating Crystal Palace, but that kind of does go to show, John, that you can, if going watching the game in the offices on Saturday, Crystal Palace it's like they couldn't function, and the players kind of looked at, some of them thought they'd never played football in their lives. So teams can take heart from those sort of results. Grimsby obviously beating Manchester United early in the season. Is that something that Burton will be thinking as well when they get a home to West Ham? West Ham not having the greatest of times as well. Obviously did get past QPR on Sunday in the end, but Burton have kind of, they've had to be favourite in all their games so far. They can maybe go and enjoy being the underdog this time. Yeah,
I mean they'll fancy that one definitely. They'll have a right go at West Ham, and I think it's a bit of an unusual. There's a longer gap, I think, to the next round than usual. We've got about a month. It's about a month away, so obviously a lot can sort of change in that time. But West Ham had to sort of work pretty hard to get past QPR, didn't they, at the weekend? So and they're obviously at home in that game. They'll have to go to Burton, and Burton have got nothing to lose. They've obviously knocked out those non-league teams, and they've finally obviously got a nice reward. That could well be a televised game as well, couldn't it? Burton West Ham. They'll be definitely interested to see that one and see whether they can sort of give them a shock.
Yeah, obviously got Salford City. Swindon was called off, wasn't it? They're playing next week for the honour to go to Manchester City and see what unfolds there. I'm sure Salford will be looking forward to going back after last season, if they were to win, go back after last season's 8-0 defeat. I feel like Man City, does anyone else feel like Man City have suddenly just started getting home ties constantly all the time in the FA Cup, and they ever seem to be, I mean, they've got nothing to back that up. It just feels like they're always at home in these sort of early rounds.
I feel like they definitely play Newcastle all the time, and in at least one of the cup competitions we will inevitably face Man City at some point.
Fourth round there.
Mm-hmm.
Who have you got in the fourth round?
That's a good question. Oh, that's a better way.
Okay. Well, you don't have to worry about Man City this year, then. That's fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's move off the FA Cup. Let me say a couple of weeks before the fourth round. We'll talk about that in the coming time. Let's move on to sort of some domestic matters. Chris, the big news kind of out of Norwich City at the weekend, obviously beat Walsall in that Sunday game handsomely, but big news, the big talking point afterwards was Josh Sargent and this text message to the gaffer to say he's not available to play. Is he on his way out?
Well, that's the question, isn't it, really? I mean, I think he hoped he would be, because we've all seen this situation unfold a million times, haven't we? When players want out, and 9 times out of 10, it's all sort of swept under the carpet, and these messages are sent, these things are done, and the manager comes out and says, "Oh, he's been ill, or he's had a knock, or this or that, or whatever," and it's all kind of
tight hamstring, Norman, isn't it? It's just feeling his hamstring this morning. So
now I'm presumably that's exactly what Josh Sargent thought would happen when he sent this message, but it didn't. And Philippe Clement came out and basically just called him out after the game. So, yeah, I mean, it really depends. I think the problem for Sargent, and it's something he should have foreseen, really, is that, I mean, Norwich don't need to sell him. Norwich are in a good financial position. So, and he's under contract until 2028 as well. So there's no, they can hold out for top dollar. Toronto, who were the side who were in for him, they've offered, it's been variously reported, but around $18 million, which I think is about 13.5 million quid, which is about £10 million short of their valuation for him. Because I mean, they agreed a deal. I think was it Wolfsburg or in the summer? I can't. It was a German side they agreed a deal with in the summer for 23 million.
They've been in Germany before, hadn't he? So
yeah, but Josh Sargent rejected it on sort because it didn't suit his family and things. So that's the price they want again. And they can hold out for it. They can hold out for it because, like I say, they can afford to keep him. And if that means booting him into the reserves or the under-21s for a while, they'll do it. But I think from his point of view, presumably the reason he wants to go is because he wants to play for the US at the World Cup, at the home World Cup in the summer, wants to sort of, be more visible domestically, wants to go and play in North America, so he's in the MLS, so they can see what he's doing, so he can score a few goals and hopefully get himself into the squad. But yeah, it's all backfired because instead of that, he could now find himself playing no football whatsoever for the next few months and having no chance at all of making the team. So yeah, it seems to have been a bit of a tactical blunder from Sargent. Well, obviously, we'll see what happens towards the end of the window. It might be that everyone just comes to an agreement and says, yeah, okay, fine, off you go. But at the minute, it doesn't seem that way because Clemens said he's not going. Norwich have said they're holding out for the money, and if the manager and the club are on the same sheet, then they could just keep him.
Yeah, and John, do you think that probably the fans won't be too chuffed about that either, will they? So then if he does come back, you're gonna have to do that sort of kind of making up as well from that point of view. So a bit of a sticky situation all around.
Yeah, he's in an awkward position now because if Norwich sort of do play sort of hardball and won't let him go, want to keep him to his contract, then he needs to play football. If he does want to play, if he does want to play in the World Cup, he obviously needs to play football. He needs to start scoring goals because you think he started the season okay, then he went off the boil, maybe just showed signs of sort of coming back a little bit recently. So he needs to get it resolved, one way or the other, because he needs to be playing matches and scoring goals. But just on a sort of other Norwich side, you've got to say well done to Jova Makama because the way that he's sort of come in now and started scoring goals for them, he's been phenomenal over the last sort of few months. And I remember sort of talking to him when he was up at Lincoln and sort of coming through there, and I know the club were really proud of the sort of progress that he was making there alongside sort of Freddie Draper as well. And obviously I sort of kind of kept a little bit of an eye on him and obviously saw he had made that move to Norwich, and you sort of thought maybe he might have maybe a little bit of a settling in sort of first sort of season there. But I think he's into double figures for goals for the season now, I think. So and he got 3, didn't he, at the weekend in that cup game, got a hat-trick in the cup. So yeah, he's flying at the moment. Not necessarily amazing goals, but he's been in the right places to score them and sort of knocking them in. So yeah, well done to him. And obviously that's maybe taken a little bit of the pressure off Norwich and maybe off Sargent as well.
Well, that's it. It's probably emboldened Norwich, hasn't it, to be able to take a harder line with Sargent because, even a few months ago, you would have said he was their only chance of scoring goals, whereas now they've suddenly got somebody else who's putting them in, and they can they've got a bit more power now, so they can kind of do what they want.
Yeah, definitely. We'll finish. We haven't got loads of time left. But let's just finish up with some of the managerial changes since we last spoke. Starting the Championship, Eric Ramsay going in at West Brom. Chris, kind of maybe a slightly unknown name to sort of the wider public. Obviously, young, coming in with a real opportunity there at West Brom.
Yeah, I think you can. The obvious sort of parallel to draw with that one is probably Kieran McKenna. I would say when he went in at Ipswich, because they both come through. They've both been coaches at Man United. Ramsay was under Ten Hag. He's worked at Chelsea as well, so there's a sort of similar lineage there. But Ramsay's worked in the MLS for 2 years with Minnesota, reached the playoff semi-finals, which are, by all accounts, I'm not a great follower of MLS, but Minnesota are not quite a minnow, but they haven't got the sort of budget and players that you would expect them to be in the playoffs. So, he's overachieved in the US. But it's still a risk. It's still a risk because they're coming off the back of someone in Ryan Mason who was young, who was 34, there was a sort of perception that he was a very process-driven young manager in the way that many are. And I think, rightly or wrongly, Ramsay will come in and be viewed through very much the same sort of lens by supporters. And it'll mean he's kind of got it all to prove from the outset, really. I don't think he'll get an awful lot of time there to prove himself. But, they've got the players. Well, they've got the players to sort of be a top half side, I'd say. Maybe not quite, maybe top six at a push, but I think from the owners, there'll be no great expectations this year. It'll be playoffs next season, I would say. But yeah, I think you'll have to, given his profile is so similar to Ryan Mason, I would say you'll have to. It's one there'll be a lot of fans who are skeptical, I would say. So you'll need to win them over quite quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the feeling was that with West Brom, that I think there was maybe a little bit surprised they were going for another young coach. I think that maybe the feeling was that Ramsay's got more sort of coaching experience because he's been in the game a long time, and also he's got more managerial experience with those sort of couple of seasons at Minnesota as well. So I think they obviously haven't been put off, and they obviously believe that Ramsay, can exceed what Mason did and do better than him. And I think there was a feeling as well that Ramsay had been in the running for the job when Mason got it, so they obviously knew about him and he'd obviously been on their radar. So it's going to be a fascinating one to watch, that one.
Matt Bloomfield's had an interesting season, John, as well, hasn't he? Obviously sacked at Luton, having made that move from Wickham. He's back in the Championship with Oxford. An opportunity for him to get winning games of football again if he can, and kind of get that stock back on the rise. Yeah,
well, I remember when I was watching a few of the Wickham games when he was there, and sort of last season, what have you, and they were, absolutely flying up towards the top of League One. They were sort of going great guns, and perhaps in hindsight he shouldn't have gone to Luton, but it's obviously easy to say that because he obviously felt it was a step up going into the Championship. He was going to be guaranteed to be at that level, whereas Wickham were obviously trying to get into the Championship, but obviously it kind of sort of backfired in the end because he couldn't turn it around, couldn't turn that sort of sinking ship around at Luton, and they started off sort of fairly averagely in League One this season. So I think from his own point of view, maybe some of the Oxford fans might sort of think that he's slightly fortunate to get another job straight back in at Championship level, especially when Oxford are kind of in a similar situation to Luton were when they took over their last season. They're in a relegation battle. So I suppose that they're hoping he's kind of maybe sort of learned the lessons from Luton and has developed his managerial skills or what have you to have a better go at it this time. But it's certainly not going to be an easy task, is it?
Yeah, Chris, tough one for him down at the bottom of that Championship, isn't it? Because it's tight, but it can quickly become not tight if you don't get those results on the board.
Yeah, well, I think like we've said about Oxford before, haven't we? Sort of this season, the teams like Oxford and Portsmouth who haven't got the biggest budgets, this season's Championship's a bit of a nightmare because you've obviously had you've had Birmingham and Wrexham come in with big money, and that just forces everybody down. And I think that's the problem Oxford have had. You know, they're not playing badly. Nobody's really smashing them. They're probably playing as well as they did last season, but the competition is just that bit stiffer, and there's nobody down there, you know, other than Sheffield Wednesday. There's nobody else really down there. There's no small clubs left in the Championship, so they're kind of fighting an uphill battle, really.
Yeah, tough one, John. And your old mate, you used to call him Mr. Assist back in your Hayes days. Have I imagine that, John?
Yeah.
John
your
Brady.
Your memory's certainly in good shape. Yes,
I remember that. I remember Chris is going to Stevenage, Newcastle.
Yeah, we can't get much past you. But yeah, I mean, John Brady, you know, going back in the day, I'm talking about going back 30 years now. Going back to about the year 96 around that time, and John was playing for Hayes at the time, in the conference and what have you. And yeah, it was a very good sort of right at that stage. He was sort of playing as kind of like a right wing back, and he would get, you know, a lot of energy, get up and down the line, and a great sort of dead ball specialist as well. So he did set up an awful lot of goals for that team, and also he had a decent sort of playing career, and you know, he's gone into management. He was at Brackley, wasn't he, in non-league for a long time, and then you know, a while back, obviously, he got that job at Northampton. You know, I think overall, you'd say that he did really well there overall. He got them back out of League Two. He sort of kind of established them in League One. Did a couple of 100 games there. So he's had to bide his time a little bit, and he's not shirked a challenge by going in at Port Vale, because you know, they've got a big gap to close at the bottom of the table to get out of trouble. But yeah, he'll certainly give it his all. He'll get that team grafting and what have you. And there have been one or two little signs in the last couple of games that, you know, their fortunes are slightly picking up. So I wish him well there, and hope he can keep them up. Yeah,
definitely. I think my memory might be fading me now, but did you speak to him recently, Chris?
Yes, no, I did. I spoke to him last year, not long after he resigned from Northampton. And yeah, I think the impression I got, and he sort of said it, was just, I think he just got tired, because Northampton, you know, a bit like we just speaking about Oxford, really, keeping Northampton in League One on the sort of budget they had. And I think, you know, he'd done it, and he'd done it again. And I think last season, again, we'll go back to Wrexham and Birmingham. Wrexham and Birmingham were in that league, and the budgets had all sort of shot up. And I think he just got sort of tired of fighting that uphill battle with Northampton, and just needed a break. Like you say, he'd been in management for such a long time in various guises, and I think he was fatigued. He needed a bit of time off, like a lot of managers do. And yeah, so I think hopefully he's refreshed. Hopefully he's back and ready for another uphill battle in League One.
Well, definitely. Well, I thought we were talking about John then being refreshed and ready for an uphill battle, getting the paper out this week after his time away. But good to have you back, John. We'll call it there, chaps. Thanks very much, Chris. Thanks for joining us as well as always, and everybody for tuning in. Like I said, like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We appreciate that. We will catch you next time, and look forward to the FLP this Sunday. Thanks very much, everyone.
Cheers, brothers.